to the show. I am so pumped for you to meet Holly McCaw. APR. She's out of Otsego Public Schools in Michigan. She's got a district of about 2,400 students. She's a one-person shop, and she's got a lot of great knowledge and things to share with you. I am really excited. She runs district social media channels. They don't have separate channels for her 5 schools. She's going to break down why she does it, reasons, things that she avoids by doing it, and things that she adds by only having one district page for both Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. So we talk a lot about that, and the power of just having one voice for the district. We're going to jump into some social media guidelines that she provides for people that are going to run social media pages, maybe for an outside organization or groups like that. She talks about strategies that she uses to get content from staff, and she has one that I have never heard before, ever. And you're going to want to learn it. And it's talking about, dealing with the principles and lesson plans. And it's really unique, and you're going to love it. And then she's also going to dive into some of her best stories that she shared on social media, why she thinks they did so well, and how she talks to staff, getting them encouraged and excited about telling their story. So you're going to learn a ton. You're going to take a lot of notes, so you might want to listen to this a couple times. And then we do have some really special things linked in the show notes today. So make sure you check that out as well. Very excited for you to meet Holly. Let's get started. For today's K-12 PR tip, I'm going to take this straight from one of the tips that Holly's actually going to share in this interview, and that is social media for your school district. It's a marathon and not a sprint. And I love this analogy. I have never run a marathon, either as Holly, but I have run a half marathon. And let me tell you, a lot of training goes into that, and it's a very tough, challenging race. So I can only imagine running a full marathon. But there are moments when you want to give up. There are big hills that you're going to have to climb, right? And that water station is going to be too far away, and you're just going to want to stop. And just say, I'm good. Like, I tried, but I can't do it. But there's also going to be times where you get recharged by the audience, right? And there's people cheering you on, saying you can do it. There are those folks that are giving you that refreshment, and that give your body the nourishment to make it just those 1, 2, 3 more miles to complete the race. Social media is that same way. We definitely hit struggles, and there are challenging things that we're going to have to deal with, comments and bickering, and all of those things. But there are also those really encouraging moments where we get to share those great stories, and we get that positive reinforcement from our community and from maybe even the world, talking about the great things that our students are doing, and you feel recharged and re-energized to keep going. So yes, it is a daily, thing that you have to be aware of, social media, and it's a consistency thing. But you have to be ready to run that long race. It's not something that's just going to happen overnight, and it's not something that you can only do once a week, right? You've got to be consistent out there. So I really love that advice from Holly, and you're going to get a lot more advice in this episode. So let's get started. Hey, Holly, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
I'm so glad you're here. You're joining us from Michigan, right?
Yes, I am.
Awesome, and it's good to be able to see you in person. For those that don't know who Holly McCaw is, why don't you just introduce yourself?
All right. So right now, our school district is in Otsego, Michigan, which is in the southwest side of Michigan, beautiful west side. It's gorgeous here, especially in the summer. And I have been in this district now for 10 and a half years. It has absolutely flown by. Prior to that, like several school PR people, I was in the news business, and so I spent almost 14 years in broadcast journalism. So I did reporting, producing, anchoring, the whole bit. And it was, well, 10 and a half years ago, I happened to actually run into one of our principals here in the store, grocery store of all places. She said, "Hey, I'm supposed to call you. There's a job opening." And kind of the rest is history. I was working the morning shift, not getting a lot of sleep, two really young kids. And I kind of thought, you know what, I think this is my opportunity. I always knew I'd kind of go into PR, and I was thinking maybe like 3 more years in the news business, but it was just too good of an opportunity to not go for. And to hope that it would be there in 3 years, I just didn't want to risk that. And so I applied, and here I am, and it's absolutely wonderful. I absolutely love this job. It's the best of the storytelling from the news side that I always enjoyed doing, but all the positives of education.
Yeah, good things happen in the grocery store, huh?
I right.
That's awesome, and it was the right time. I mean, timing is, I guess,
It was.
relative, but I'm really glad that you got into it. And
Yeah.
you work some crazy hours in this job, but I suppose working that morning show it was even crazier, right?
Yeah, that was a little crazy. I actually loved the morning shift. You have your whole afternoon, but boy, if you don't get to bed by 8 o'clock, especially when you have to get up about 1:15, 1:30, it gets tough.
Oh, that is
Yeah.
definitely challenging. So was it the district that your kids were going to go to, or
So I actually live in a neighboring district. My
okay?
kids, when I first started here, weren't old enough to go to school yet. Right now, they're 12 and 14. My oldest was going to go to preschool, and the same friend who I happened to run into in the store, she said, "You have to get her signed up for Learn and Grow Preschool." And I was like, "Okay." And it happened to be in this school district. And so I did. And so now in Michigan, we have what's called school of choice. So you can basically go wherever you would like. And it is the next town over. So it's not real far. But after she had that year in preschool and then me working here, there was no doubt that my kids would come here too.
Okay.
So yeah, they're here.
Oh, okay, that's awesome. And then your calendar matches up and all of that,
Yeah.
which is really good. And we were just talking before we started, and you just got your recent APR, so
Yeah.
congratulations.
Thank you so much. Yeah. It was I kind of took the long route to getting it. It's a lot of work, and when you're busy with young kids, and I feel like I kind of took the first year to be like, what is this even all about? And then really kind of dove in when I could, and it's been an awesome experience. Though, I mean, that for me, that's just kind of what I think I needed. That just is how it fit into my life. I wouldn't recommend a 3 year process to do it, but it worked for me, and it was an awesome experience. I really encourage people to do it.
Yeah, well, that's great. So your role is director of communications for Otsego Public Schools. Was there already a this position before you stepped into it 10.5 years ago?
A little bit. It was not quite what it is now. I think the person before me wore maybe a couple other hats. It was maybe more of a secretarial position. Social media was just kind of coming into the scene when I got in here. And so the person before me took another job somewhere. And I think they kind of said, okay, let's do something more with this. Let's make it really more of an administrative communications PR job. And so what's been nice is that I've been able to, even though I didn't haven't done this before, this is my first one. I was kind of able to really just learn from other people and make it, what it could be. And I've had lots of support in doing that. So we've definitely grown the position a lot in the last 10 years.
Yeah. And how big is your district? Can you tell me the size?
So our student population is about 2,400, so it's a relatively smaller district in comparison to a lot of others that I know exist. We have five main schools, so three elementaries, one middle school, one high school. We do now have our own preschool building. That was a bond from a few years ago, so that's really exciting. We have a pretty robust preschool program. Um, but so our three elementary schools feed into the one middle school and then the high school.
Okay, awesome. And how does social media fit into your role?
It I don't think there would be a role like this without it, to be honest. We need to communicate with our stakeholders and we need to be where they are, and they're on social media.
Right.
And so it's such a key component of my job that it's a daily, certainly a daily part of it. It's our opportunity to give people a window into our buildings that they don't get otherwise. They know the school exists, and if they don't hear about what's happening inside and get to see what's happening inside, how are they supposed to know how to feel about it? I think of our parents. They drop their kids off in the morning and pick them up in the afternoon. Well, this is our opportunity to allow them to kind of see into the classrooms, and it might not be their kid's classroom, right? But at least it's someone else's. And if you have smiling kids, they're going to feel good about it. As far as the community, they, get to see what they're supporting. They get to see what happens in classrooms and how innovative teachers are and how kids are learning, that type of thing. And so then they understand what they're supporting. And alumni kind of the same way. It's like, oh, I used to do that. And, it's just a lot of pride for their alma mater. So
Right. So getting all
it's a
those
huge
positive
part.
stories out. I love it. So what channels do you are you responsible for?
So we do Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We do have a YouTube channel, just where I put our videos. We don't do a ton of videos. We did last year with COVID, just safety videos and things like that. Facebook and Instagram are clearly the big ones. Twitter has seemed to, um, I guess, trail off a little bit. Facebook is king. Um, so that's really the biggest one with our stakeholders, but certainly a lot of people are on Instagram as well.
Okay. And we kind of talked about this when we were getting ready for this interview. You follow some sound advice that I try giving to everybody. Not everybody takes it, or it was already set up before they got there. But you run district social media accounts and you don't have individual pages for each of your 5 buildings.
Right.
So I want to ask you, why does this work for you and why would you recommend it to others?
Okay. Um, Otsego is a very special place, and I can imagine that other people think that their communities are as well. There is so much pride in this community, and it kind of sounds cheesy, right? But it is a community. It's a community, one community. And I think there's a lot of pride that comes from that. So we're kind of like all in this together. It's our thing. And it's just kind of a belief here that we are all one district. We're not 5 separate schools. We really are one district. And I think sometimes when you start to do separate things and people end up in their silos, it can create some division. It can, a little competition. I think there's enough competition that naturally happens anyway when you see those elementary kids come to middle school anyway. Um, but it just kind of, it just puts each building on its own then, and instead of everybody kind of seeing what's happening across our entire district. I also think too, if you do those separately, you might have one principal that does a ton of stuff on social media, and then you have another one that doesn't do very much, or whoever's responsible for it, and then it can simply appear as though one's a better school than the other one. And when we know that wouldn't be true, but perception is truth. And so I think that would be my caution in doing separate pages. I think that's a bonus of having the district pages, that I can focus on making sure that every building is represented. If I kind of get through a week and I've got, nothing from one school, I'll call them real quick and say, hey, what do you guys have this week? I haven't had anything from your building yet. And of course, the teachers are taking pictures all the time, and we can quickly, come up with something. So it's a way to, we can strategize that to make sure everybody is doing that. But I think one of the bigger things, it really goes back to that community and that sense of pride and connection. Let's say one elementary school, I post something from there. If it's a third grade class, maybe everybody across the district is thinking, oh, my kid's in first grade. I can't wait till they get to do that in third grade. Or if they're older, it's like, oh, I remember when my kids did that. So it builds that connection. And if you do something for middle school or high school, The ones younger than that might say, "Oh, I can't wait till I hope my child gets to do that in high school when they get there." That's really neat. So it really connects the buildings, it connects the community across there. So I think that's really helpful.
Yeah, I totally agree. And if you have, 6 kids like I do, and at one
Yeah.
point I have, a couple in elementary, a couple in middle school, and a couple in high school, I'm following 3 different pages. They're all competing to show up in my news feed, right? And it can get really overwhelming to try
Yeah, that's a
to.
great point because we do. I mean, there's tons of our families that have kids in different buildings, and it's nice to just have one central location. And while we use our social media most of the time for those positive things, there are some times where we have to direct people to important information, and then they have one place to go as well.
Right.
And so that helps. It also gives, I think, one voice. You want to, what's the character of your page, what's the voice or personality of your page, so that remains consistent. Also, as the PR person, then everything that is being put out, and not in a micromanaging way, but just in an informative way of what's going out on the social media platforms.
Yeah, and sometimes everybody wants a page, but and I've
Yeah.
said this before. My friend Kristen Majette says, social media is like a free puppy. It's not like a
Yeah.
free beer. Like you actually have
Right.
to take care of it. And then in this
Yeah.
last, 18, 19 months with comments and all of that stuff, it's just like some of our buildings probably aren't equipped to handle that. I mean, heck, we're hardly equipped to
Right.
handle it with what we've had to deal with, right?
Exactly. And and our elementary buildings do have sort of like their PTO pages, and they'll put little, like, more informative things, but they've all had to deal with some of that as well. And so we always caution, we kind of we have social media guidelines. If you are going to start a page for any reason, this is our sports teams or parent groups or whatever, think about these things. Do you have someone monitoring that all the time? What are you going to do if somebody comments negatively on it? What are you going to do if, right? And it's a lot of those warning signs that people don't think about.
Right. Would you mind sharing that little guideline sheet that you share with
Sure,
those other groups? Um, because I'd love to include that in the show notes because I think people would
sure.
love to see that. Because
Yeah,
it's something a lot of people are dealing with. I just saw in one of our discussion groups where somebody's brand new to their role and they're like, "We have all these pages," and she wanted to like
yeah,
wrangle them in, and I just said, "That's a great goal, but just so you know, like a lot of people have been fighting that for years and years, and it's really challenging, but if you
yeah.
can at least get a guideline out there that here's some things to make sure you're aware of and be prepared for and all of that, I think that would
Right.
really be
And
helpful."
it really gets people thinking, is this the right
Right.
way for you to communicate? Or do you go with a remind or a texting app or something, what is it that you really want to do?
Yeah. So you kind of answered one of my questions. So you don't have building specific pages
Mhm.
for those channels, but you do allow organizations or, PTO groups or whatever, you allow them to have pages. So do you try to follow those pages and get content that you can pull over to the district page, or do you kind of ask them if you have something worthy, like share it with me, or how do you do that?
So I actually don't. Most at the elementary level, most of it's the secretaries that kind of run a little bit of that, and so it's really more informational. I try not to pull from that or even engage, to
Yeah.
be honest, because they are not school sponsored pages. They are separate from the school. So I feel like once I start engaging in that, answering questions, then I'm gonna do that all of the time. Or if I start pulling stuff from there or asking them for content, then it's going to be up to me all the time to go gather that content. And so I kind of want to keep my strategy of having that relationship with the staff to kind of feed it into me, and then encourage them to share from our page onto theirs
Yep.
instead of vice versa.
Okay. Perfect.
Mhm.
And you have 5 schools, there's 1 of you. So and you talked earlier about just trying to kinda keep that balance, but how do
Mhm.
you get content for your social media pages? Do you have, are you always asking or going out and getting it yourself, or are you receiving stuff in from staff? How do you handle that?
Luckily, it's a mix of both,
Okay.
and I feel like it's taken me years to figure out a really good strategy, right? I know people are tired of my emails. Hey, who's got something going on, right? So I try and like somehow keep my claws in every little thing that I possibly can. So I do have, the buildings always share their newsletters with me, so I kind of see what's coming up. They share their calendars with me, and things like that, so I can kind of take a look at that. I do reach out to different groups, and that there's those rock star staff members who are always good at sending you stuff or alerting you to, hey, this person's doing this. Um, Last year with COVID, and it's funny, I help out with a high school video class. They do a little newscast, and I even find I'm like, I don't even promote my own class. So I totally understand when you constantly ask the teachers, like, be sure to tell me. I mean, I even forget, right? So I just wanted to, I kind of brainstormed something new last year because I'm like, they have enough on their plate. They don't need another email from me saying, what are you doing in your class when they're going, they're just trying to keep themselves organized, right? And so I did talk with principals, and they have to look through lesson plans every week. And I've got 5 schools, and I've got 5 days of the week. And so I just said, can you guys just find me one thing that you see in your lesson plans that you think might be interesting? And just give it to me. You don't even have to do anything else with it. Just say, Mrs. Smith is doing a cool math project. I'm like, awesome. So then I'll reach out to Mrs. Smith and copy the principal on it. Hey, the principal mentioned that you were doing this. What's a good time to come in? And that has actually worked out really well, and then just continued to snowball. People see me in the buildings even more. So that allows me too to get in the building. Because I it's nice when people send you pictures, but I don't want to count on people to always get the content for me. It's that relationship piece where I want to be visible in the buildings, because every time you go into a building, people will stop you and go, "Oh, I got to tell you, next week we're doing this," right? So it continues to build, and I think that's been a really good plan. I've been able to get into almost each building every week. In fact, right now I'm kind of carrying things over from week to week because I don't end up posting all of the things that I have. If something's evergreen, I might just kind of keep it, for when I don't have anything from that building.
Right.
So that has actually worked out really, really well. And then if I don't hear from the principals at the beginning of the week, then I can just kind of nudge them and say, hey, what are you seeing?
Right.
Um, but I
Oh,
feel like that feeds more staff members to say, oh yeah, we got to tell Holly, and then they'll send me a few things.
yeah, that's great. So I've never
Mhm.
heard of that strategy, and I guess I don't know what principals do besides having to take care of the naughty kids a lot of times. But they're looking through lesson plans anyway, so you're
Mhm.
just asking, "Hey, what's one thing that looks interesting?" And then
Yep.
you're getting out into the buildings to or coordinate when exactly they're going to do that activity or
Yep.
that lesson. And then
And then I turn around too and I send the teacher, hey, here are some of the pictures I got today, so they can send them to the parents if they want. I send it to the principal along with the write up as well. And so they've been able to put that as a spotlight in their newsletter. So we kind of use that one thing and we're able to put it in several locations.
oh, that's awesome.
I want to make it beneficial for them
Right.
as well as, for me.
Yeah. And then you just talked a lot about, being in the building, developing those relationships, which is so
Yeah,
key, right? Because
it's
the
so
more they
key.
see you, the more comfortable they get with you. And then you share those stories and then they get those pictures back and they're like, oh my gosh. And so
Yeah,
hopefully next time they'll be thinking about you proactively as well.
exactly. Yeah.
That,
This year, I have been able to. I know that it's one thing for all of us school PR people, right? Can we get a few minutes in front of the staff? And I just with tension so high this year, and sometimes employees want to get in the mix, And of course that's not good. And I did say to all the principals, I'm like, you have to let me into your staff meetings at the beginning of the year. And I didn't just go in and say, okay, don't post negative things on social media. I really went in and said, here's our strategy, here's why we do social media. And I share your information on the, a like kind of gives you this traction, and a share does this, and a comment does this, and give them some examples of things that we've had, positively, that have blown up, which is awesome, but also how that can be, in the reverse. And so and I kind of started with, tell me something your neighbor does across the hallway or down the way that you think people should know about. And every single person in that room had something.
Right.
And so I said, okay, now email it to me. And so immediately I have all of these great stories. And so I can say, okay, when are you going to do that? And so that was a way to just get in front of them and get thinking about what it is that I'm looking for. And then I think once they really understood why we do it, it's not just a picture. I'm not just posting pictures. There's a real engagement, conversation strategy behind social media, right? And I have gotten a lot of different things from the buildings that I've been able to talk to so far. It's been a
Oh
good
my
thing.
gosh, you just shared so much good stuff. So, talking with your staff about social media, about how long of a talk was that when you went in with each
It's
staff?
15 minutes.
Okay, so you
It's
crammed
right about 15 minutes.
you crammed
I
a
did.
lot into 15 minutes.
Yes.
And I really like how you said, tell me about something across the hall, because a lot of teachers and educators and
Yes.
leaders, all of that, they're really humble. So
They are.
they don't see what they're doing as awesome, but they know that their partner, teaching partner or paraprofessional is doing really awesome things. So when you put that spotlight the other way on somebody
Yes.
else, it's so easy for them to come up with ideas, right?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. They don't hesitate to put the spotlight on someone else. And
Yeah.
they want you there. And oh, you got to go check out that room and that room. So yeah, that was good.
That was good. So you asked them to email you that right away, and then you followed up with the teacher they suggested and said, "Hey, when could I come to your classroom?" Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
And of course I had a few of them say it out loud so everybody could hear. We didn't share completely around the room, but yes. And so then I'll follow up with the actual teacher that does whatever they talked about.
Right. And then you kind of talked about your strategy for getting those positive stories and maybe some posts that have reached a lot of people. You talked about the like, comment, share algorithm rules. And so, just so if you guys haven't heard that, a like on Facebook is kind of worth like 1 point. A comment, when somebody actually comments, it's worth 7 points. And I honestly have our first grade teacher at our little school in New Auburn. She honestly comments on everything, and I love her for it.
I
Mrs.
love those kids, right?
Yeah, Mrs. McFall is so encouraging to all the students. And so that's 7 points every time. So more people see that post. And then if you share it, that's worth like 14 or more points if you got a lot, if you're connected to a lot of people. And so them
Mhm.
hitting that share button, just that alone can help your story reach more people. And so then guess what? More people do it, right?
Exactly. And that's the power of social media. And what do we want to put out there? Do we want more people to see our school district and the amazing things that we do? Well, then let's share it, right? Let's comment on it. And I had one teacher say, I liked it, commented, and shared it. And I was like, good, keep it up.
That was funny. I did that point system in one of my kickoffs with one of our new schools because, of course, we do social media for almost 100 schools across the country. But they took some selfies during that, and then a bunch of people, I mean, it had like 80 shares or something
Oh,
from
nice.
kickoff day, and then they were like making one comment word at a time, like this is 7 points or whatever. It was kind of funny, but it's like people remember that too. They
Right.
remember those numbers. And
It
so
makes it very tangible for
right.
them to say, oh, now I understand, what.
Right. And the whole
Mhm.
thing is, Facebook is looking for engagement. So if your content on your page is leading to those likes, those comments, those shares, they're going to be inclined to show it to more people because they're like, hey, people want to see this.
Mhm.
They don't want to see some boring whatever from your first cousin that always posts what they're eating for breakfast. Like so that's what you're in competition with, right?
Exactly. Yep.
So I absolutely love it. Well, we're gonna make sure, Holly, to link to all of your pages because you do a really, really great job on all of your channels. I really love your Instagram page because you really focus on images of students and staff, which obviously that's where a lot of your students are at on Instagram. So
Hmm.
you're focusing there. But what are some of the best stories, or if you had to pick one of the best stories you've gotten to share in the last, let's say, 6 months on social media, what would that story be that comes to mind?
I mean, there's two that come to mind most
Okay,
recently.
share both.
Okay, so we had our high school students participate in a 9/11 anniversary event. Our local fire department, and you're probably familiar, several firefighters will do these stair climbs that commemorate the 110 stories, and so they walk, the equivalent to 110 stories, and these happen in arenas or stadiums around the country. Well, some of our local firefighters usually take part in other ones, and they said, you know what, why don't we do it at the high school this year? And maybe we can ask the high school if they want to participate. And so while the high school kids couldn't do all 110 stories worth, 22,000 steps or something, they did, all week. The kids heard announcements, because none of these kids were alive in 2001. So they heard announcements all week of just sort of the historical facts and what happened. And then on that Friday, as the firefighters had started their climb up and down the stairs of our stadium, the students went out, and our stadium's kind of a bowl. And so they went down the ramps into the stadium, walked a little bit around the track, and went up one of the flights of stairs. And we have 750 students. They were all completely silent through the whole thing, and it was amazing. And I didn't do video; it was actually just pictures. But even just the pictures were just really powerful, and that really got a really big reaction from parents, community members, and people would tag each other in it, and so that was probably above the 20,000 reach mark, which is huge. I mean, our typical reach is between 2 and 3,000, I would say.
Okay.
Um, and then the other one, which I sent you recently, and thanks for sharing that one, but it's a very sad story because one of our students lost their father in a car accident, and he plays rocket football and decided to come to his rocket football game. He didn't play, but the opposing team came and actually presented him, at the center field with a gift card, I think, and a card, and they had some signs up around the stadium. And so someone had taken some pictures and sent them to me, and I put that out there, just thanking them for their compassion and sportsmanship and caring about one of our kids. And I think that one's above about 55,000 right now. Like,
Wow.
it's
Yeah, I think
just,
it was a
when you have two communities too, it's going to get even more traction. But what I love about both of those stories is that they were positive, and it was just about kids doing good things. And I think those get a lot of traction.
Yeah, and our kids are doing great things all the
Yes.
time, right? And so it's just a matter of sharing those stories. But I think when you shared it with me the first time, you were around 40,000. So then it
Yeah.
picked up even more.
Yeah.
Um, and those are powerful because that helps get all of your posts be seen by more people.
Mhm.
But those are great. So I'm going to make sure to link to both of those posts in the show notes for you guys that are listening as well, so that you can see both of those ideas. And then I want you to scan through Holly's pages because she really does a good job of storytelling and sharing great things in the classroom. I think you're going to get some great tips. So, as we wrap up, Holly, what would you share as your best social media tip?
Ooh. Can I have two?
Yes, you can. I'll let you. You had two good posts. I'm going to let you have two
Oh, you're the
tips.
best. Because one I thought of this morning.
Okay.
So, and it was kind of a key takeaway for me last year. And I think I actually learned this from you, Andrea. It was not everything has to be posted on Facebook. And so sometimes you have to start, Facebook is an opportunity for us to um, start the conversation. So what kind of conversation do we want to start? and we can control the message, and it's up to us of what we put out there. And so an example is last year with COVID, some of our elementary schools, they used to all do the same thing at the end of the year. Well, they didn't all do the same thing for logistical reasons or whatever. Well, you don't want to start pitting, well, they get to do this, why don't I? Well, they get to do this. And so sometimes it was really a decision of, this is a neat thing, but maybe this doesn't go on the district page, because why am I going to put something out there that's just going to make people feel bad or have questions, or that isn't the purpose. It isn't to share all things, it's to really highlight what we have. So sometimes you have to make those tough choices of, maybe not everything has to go on Facebook, or there's a better way to do that. um, and then my other, it is a marathon, not a sprint. And what I mean by that is, you just stay the course. When I've never run a marathon, but I can imagine what it's like. And you're going to need water along the way. You might have some aches and pains along the way, but you still have a sight for that finish line, and that is to share the positive things that are happening in this district. And people will try and derail you, and there will be hiccups, and there will be things that aren't so pleasant, that you're going to have to address. And that's part of social media, that you're going to have to do along the way. And we've all dealt with that, and we certainly have this year. And some people say, gosh, don't you just want to shut it down? And sometimes you do, yeah. But you know what? No, because that's not going to win. That's not what we do. So we need to stay the course and continue to put those positive things out there, and that positivity comes back. That is going to win out, and you always want to make the positive so loud that the negative, gets drowned out. And so you just continue to do that. It can be very hard sometimes when people want to ruin your posts, but just keep at it.
Yeah, and it really does make a difference, as evidence of, your couple really big posts.
Yeah,
Those our community, our world needs the positive stories that our schools have to share. And
yes.
thanks for doing your part, and really, really good advice here. So glad we got a chance to talk. Now, Holly,
Me too. Thank you.
yeah, if people want to get connected with you, what's the best way?
So you can get to me on Twitter at McCaw Holly, and or email is the best too. So Otsego Public Schools is our district, and hmccaw at otsegops.org is my email.
Okay, so I'm going to have both your Twitter handle and your email linked in the show notes as well.
Awesome.
People can contact you, and I would imagine some people are going to want to reach out. We'll make sure to link that guideline that you share, and then I'll link those couple of posts. Thank you so much, and keep up the great work. Keep up the great
Thank you.
storytelling there in Otsego. I'm excited to be able to stay connected to what's happening in your school, and I wish you the best school year that we can possibly have among all the circumstances. So,
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
yeah, we'll see you next time. And thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll see you next week. Bye bye.